But with a movie like X, for example, do you get a sense that you're working on something particularly special, something that's going to resonate?
That's a good question, because often you're working on something and you're like, oh my God, this is going to be a hit. And then the movie comes out and you're like, but then sometimes you'll be working on something and you're like District 9, like, holy shit, I hope they can pull something together with all this. And then you see it and you're like, oh my God.
Gaze into the abyss.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm so excited about today's episode because I had the wonderful opportunity and honor to sit down with one of Hollywood's most prominent, experienced, and hardworking makeup and prosthetics designers. Sarah Rubano has applied her magnificent talents to movies such as Avatar: The Way of Water, as well as the upcoming sequel. She also worked on the amazing Spider-Man 2, Ghost in the Shell, as well as a whole host of other movies, including what I believe to be one of the best horror movies of the last 30 years, X. She also worked on X's prequel, Pearl, and the upcoming sequel, Maxine. In today's interview, Sarah Rubano will share with us a little bit about what it's like working with people such as James Cameron, as well as South African director Neill, Blomkamp, who she collaborated with on his films District 9, Elysium and Chappie. She also gives us an interesting perspective on what it's like working with the actress Mia Goth, who she has developed a close working relationship with. I found Sarah Rubano to be an amazingly witty, generous, and interesting guest, and it was an absolute pleasure interviewing her. I hope that you enjoy this interview as much as I did. Let's keep horror and movies alive, and if you like today's content, please don't forget to subscribe. Enjoy. Thank you so much for taking the time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on your show.
Like, just to start this off, I wanted to ask you if you could just kind of unpack a little bit, and excuse my ignorance when it comes to makeup and stuff like that. But what exactly does Sarah Rubano do? Like, I have this image in my mind of a makeup artist. See the actor on the chair and the makeup artist sort of applying makeup, but I know that there's a lot more to it. So in your own words, what do you do?
Well, as a makeup designer and a makeup head of department, I am part of the storytelling process. It's an awesome collaboration between the other creative departments, costume department, art department, props department, and of course, working under the direction of our bosses, our director, our producers, the studio, and really just developing a story visually, coming together and being a part of a storytelling experience. And I always imagine, when I'm reading a script, I think to myself, well, how can I tell the story through makeup, through hair, through prosthetics? If there were no words in the story, how could I convey visually? So, that's usually how I break down a script. But as a makeup artist, makeup designer, it is part. I'm honored to be part of the storytelling process.
Wow, I really like that. If there were no words, how would you be able to convey that message? That's really, really cool. Now, again, excuse my ignorance, but what is the difference between a makeup artist and a makeup designer, or is it sort of one and the same?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a makeup artist. That is my skill. That's my background. So then I have also a team of makeup artists who are, basically, they are delivering, the vision that I am passing along to them. I'm saying, hey, we need to get to this end result. Here's some thoughts, here's some ideas, here's some product, let's have a play. And so they are there to help facilitate. And when I'm a head of department and a makeup designer, I am setting a tone. I'm, like I said, working very closely with the director, working with the actors to figure out what that aesthetic is going to be. So when you're in that role, you're part of the development, that creative development, and you're setting the tone and you're setting the aesthetic. Whereas, and I'm also, I'm doing the testing. So then I flick into makeup artist role where I'm actually physically doing. And so, yeah, I guess it's all kind of one and the same, but as a makeup head of department and as a designer, you're setting the aesthetic and you're working very closely with the director, and the other entities to portray that visual whatever.
How did you go about getting involved with this exciting world of movies and television and all of that? Or was it something that you sort of just gradually developed from one role into this world? Or how did it happen for you?
Yeah, my story is it was very organic, the unfolding for me. And so I've been involved in this film and television, this entertainment industry for 30 years now. So it's been, my adult life. And so like the last 3 decades, I grew up in a creative household. My mother was an Avon lady, and she was an awesome mom, a stay-at-home mom. She also made, clothing for all of us kids. So I just grew up watching her, inspired by, her creative abilities. So that was a big influence on me. I knew I wanted to do something creative, went to college, wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do, but got a degree in broadcast journalism and writing. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll be a writer and I'll write for the news or something. And I was living about an hour east of LA. And after college, I moved to Los Angeles and, trying to make money to pay off those student loans. And a lot of my friends in Los Angeles, they were doing extra work. They were doing production assistant work. And it was a means to an end. And so I thought, well, goodness, I have 0 contacts, but I'm going to dip my toe into that pool. And I'm going to see if it resonates, see if I can get some traction. And, I did eventually get a production assistant role, and I went down the avenue of production coordinating, so all administrative. But I knew that my pull was into the creative realm. And so then opportunities started presenting. And really one thing led to another. And this is what I talk about at trade shows. But for young people coming up, everybody's given opportunities. It's what you make of them. And really starting out and all the way through to now, whenever I am sitting in a wonderful, opportunity, I really make the most of it. And I did back then. And then I got my traction. And, in this industry, you have to be good at what you're doing, but you also have to be enjoyable to work around. You have to get along with others. And so, that's important. So you got to be a team player, and you got to be a hard worker. You got to be looking for stuff to do all the time, and you can't be late. And so for years and years, I put my head down and just went. And one thing led to another. I did costume and fabrication. So for a while, for about 10 years. And that was great. And that landed me in the world of makeup effects and all the effect shops in Los Angeles. Steve Johnson, Todd Masters, Henson's, all of those shops. So I was a little shop rat for a while. And then I started to segue into prosthetics. Was given great opportunity and made the most of it by the likes of Howard Berger, especially. So yeah, one thing led to another. And then you start doing something and you're like, Jesus, I love this and I'm good at it. And so then there's just when you're passionate about something and you feel like it's where you should be, then great things start to happen. So that is my story in a nutshell.
Wow. I mean, that's so cool. And I mean, you were talking about, being professional and enjoyable to work with. And obviously you've been very enjoyable to work with if you just look at the sheer volume of work that you've done and also the actual projects that you've worked on. So although I'm kind of like a horror guy, I've got to ask you about Avatar, The Way of Water. I mean, What was that like?
What it's like is humbling. It's a really big project, that projects. And, one of your questions that you sent me was, do you get starstruck? Well, I wouldn't say struck, but I would say awestruck, because, it is incredibly humbling to be and surreal to be working alongside the likes of Jim Cameron. And I grew up on his movies. His movies influenced me. Alien, Abyss, those movies were riveting for me. And so, I was a young teenager at the time. And so to be then fast forward to being one of his department heads and collaborating, working alongside him was very surreal and awesome and challenging, all of those things. But, at the very end of it, at the end of the day, at the end of the working block, just incredibly rewarding, because, we put a lot of hard work into it. There's a lot of intricacies, of course, because of all the VFX component, and how live action integrates. But yeah, really, really cool and honored.
Can imagine. Wow, amazing. From a makeup perspective, or just a person working in movies, what's the difference? I don't know if you want to call it pros and cons, but the difference between working on something as big as Avatar and then something a lot smaller like X.
Yeah. Well, there are aspects of both that I really enjoy, and there are aspects of both that are incredibly challenging. So, they offer different things. And that's a good question, Den, because, there is a real difference in the experience, the overall experience. I would say, obviously on the smaller projects, there's more budgetary constraints, which can be challenging because you don't have as much resource. But within that, there's more creative freedom and more, a little bit more collaboration with the entities that the creative entities that you're working directly with. So being on a bigger project, there's a greater range of like influential voices, so that can start to become a little bit challenging. But within that, you're part of something that's big, and you're part of something that's super exciting, like Avatar, The Way of Water, which is like a tsunami of excitement. So, and your resources are endless, and you have the ability to hire the team you need to, and to really be able to resource appropriately and accordingly. So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. But yeah, always pros and cons to both. And but I love aspects of both, which is why over the years I've flipped back and forth. Working on X and Pearl in the middle of my Avatar experience was very refreshing, because I had the Avatar experience and that was awesome. And then I got to get, the joy of working on a small, kind of smaller crew, just this, like, let's just go for it, guys, not guerrilla filmmaking. It wasn't that rough, but it was just a smaller entity. And so there was, really cool stuff within that I got to glean.
Awesome. Are you speaking about sort of guerrilla filmmaking? Have you done any projects that sort of had that kind of approach?
I don't think so. Although there were aspects of District 9 that felt quite on the fly, like a lot of improv stuff. Like Neill is just such a creative genius. Like he's like, okay, we're rewriting this scene. And then Charlton's a creative genius. And he's like, I've got this to offer it, and he's improvising. And so we're like, holy shit, we got to make we got to make something that peels off his arm or his neck. And we run to the trailer, and we're, so that's pretty on the fly, that was very on the fly at times, not all the way through. But because we were like such a mobile unit, and we were out in the field, in the, the townships, etc. That was probably as close to what I would imagine guerrilla filmmaking to be, I would say. You agree?
Totally. Every day was completely different. And even by filmmaking standards, it was completely different, It
was loose, but within a structure. There was a structure around it, but within that arena, it was quite free flowing.
I'd like to just quickly segue into X. All right. I mean, honestly, and I'm not just saying this because you here, I think, in my opinion, X is probably one of the best, at least in my personal top 5 horror movies in the last 30 years. Yeah. I thought it was a really special movie. I thought it's kind of in this day and age of remakes, X is not a remake, and yet it's kind of the philosophy that I feel a lot of remade movies need to take. It's kind of honor the old movies, but do something original. And that's exactly what X did. But now, just talking about X, and from a makeup perspective, here you are, Sarah Rubano, you this lady, you've been involved in some of the nastiest, bloodiest, scariest scenes in recent years. And I was just kind of wondering, wait a minute, is Sarah Rubano actually a horror movie fan? Are you?
Oh God. That's a good question. And they are hard for me to watch. Like, I really enjoy working on them, but I mostly like the psychological thrillers, like The Exorcist and Poltergeist, and that stuff I can hardly watch. I mean, I'm watching it through my just cracks in my fingers. So I'm a real chicken, and but I will have to say that I really enjoyed X. It was fun. It had a retro, sensibility to it and style to it, which I loved. And it, wasn't just because I worked on it. It was actually just an intelligent, it was an intelligent presentation, I felt. And it was quirky, and it was funny, and it was over the top. And so, I did thoroughly enjoy that movie. I really did. But yeah, no, I'm not like a heavy duty horror fan. You probably sense that about me, which is why you're asking the question.
I know that you're about to go back into the X universe, and you're going to go and work on the third movie. I don't know if I'm allowed to say anything about that, but is that right? You're going to go and work on Maxine now, which is the third in the series, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a teaser trailer out for Maxine that Ty put out, and it's going to be, and it's set in the 80s, which is awesome, which is why I have a mullet right now. So I'm going method. I'm going 80s method right now. So I'm trying to immerse myself in the 80s. So I have a mullet currently, which I'm getting used to. But so I'm just about to dive into that. It's we're shooting in LA, and it's a 7-week shoot, and we start pretty soon. So yeah, super excited to dive back in with Ty and our producers and our actress, of course, Mia Goth.
Awesome. And by the way, Sarah, you rocking the mullet look, I just got to say. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Talking about just sticking with X. I mean, X is good on so many levels. You mentioned the look, the sort of retro feel. The sound was great. I mean, we don't even have to talk about the directing. That was great. The script was wonderful. One of the aspects, and from a horror perspective, it's not often mentioned, but the performances were great, and not just the lead performance, but all of the performances were really awesome. And you were talking about Mia. X probably made Mia Goth a star, right? It sort of really put her on the map in a big way. I was wondering, from a makeup perspective, is there a discussion that happens with you and the actor, and does the actor, their ideas about their performance, does it influence and impact your work and the work that you're going to actually do on them? Is there that sort of a process?
Yeah, I mean, we are just such a cohesive collaboration when we're developing, when we're testing, and all the way through shooting. And so, Mia and I worked very closely together all through that pocket of time. And of course, under the direction of Ty, because he is, he is at the helm. But there are all kinds of little intricacies that we work out in the makeup chair, and ideas that we'll present to Ty, or he'll present something to us, and we'll talk through and we'll test things. But yeah, every little detail is discussed and worked out and tested. And so for Mia, we were flicking between working, between making her up as Maxine and all that was involved there. And then, the next day making her up as Pearl. And then, everything that was involved there, which was extensive. And so flicking back and forth between those two roles, and then the creative and, the requirements attached to each was complex, to say the least. And though, the development of all those intricacies, she would say, hey, this is how I'm going to hold myself, so then we would maybe, feature more of one shoulder. And so, maybe we would put like, okay, so then, if the collar was going to be more exposed on this side, maybe we'll do more age spots here. So there's all kinds of subtleties like that, that play into, what she's going to do, how we can highlight the makeup and what we want to convey. And yeah, so it's a constant development of all of that. If she's holding her head down a lot as, the Pearl character, well, then maybe her hair's not out for that sequence. Maybe it's kind of in a loose bun, so we don't lose her face unless we wanted to, So, it's working out, what she's going to do in the scene, and then how we can support visually and creatively, if that makes sense.
Totally. Am I right? Was Pearl and X sort of shot back to back, or?
Yeah. So we had we wrapped X, which was, where are we? 2023. So we wrapped X, I think it was like March or April 21. And then 3 weeks later, we were shooting Pearl. So it was a real quick, reset, and then into, Technicolor.
Right.
Yeah.
Did that present quite a challenge? Because, X is obviously set in the 70s. Pearl is set before that, as far as the actual time period goes. What sort of a challenge did that present?
I actually felt that, I felt it was actually helpful we were exhausted after finishing X, because we were doing very long days. And it was a very challenging, shoot physically and mentally, but we were in the zone. And 3 weeks later, we were still in the zone, and we were also just synced in as a crew. And my connection with Mia was very strong. So we just flowed right from one into the next. And we were able to, like embrace and experience all that was X. And then we were able to like flush that out. And then, okay, now we're looking at this. And then just immerse into that and lean into that next chapter. And so actually, I think it was beneficial because we were still just in the flow.
I really want to ask you this next question. What is it like working with Mia Goth so closely?
She is awesome. She is such a pro, and she is so committed to her craft. And she's such a lovely lady, and such a talent. So, I feel like, she's inspiring me. I'm inspiring her. We have a great connect. So, she's become a dear friend of mine, and I love her to bits.
Awesome. Those are really lovely words, and I can certainly feel from you that they're very sincere. Is there a particular scene in X that you are particularly proud of?
Yeah, there is, and no one's asked me that. I've done a fair number of interviews, but I know what it is. I love the scene where she's sleeping. Mia, Maxine is sleeping. And old lady Pearl comes into the room and undresses and gets in bed. And then I love that moment where Mia turns around in bed thinking it's Wayne and opens her eyes, groggily opens her eyes, and clocks that it's old lady Pearl, this crazy old lady, and just And I love that, because in that movie, I feel like, Maxine, like her freckles, she looks beautiful laying there. She looks, it's gorgeous, like the Maxine presentation. But I also love what we see of Pearl, and then the way that it's shot and the way that it was, basically just spliced together to make work. But it's a presentation of two characters that I'm proud of, and just kind of a cool, fun scene. So yeah, that one I love. That scene I love.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, great movie, and congratulations on that film. Really special movie.
It's a big group effort, that's for sure. It always is.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it sounds like you got really close with, obviously with Mia, and I'm sure with other people on the movie too. And I'm sure on a lot of other movies you've developed these really close relationships. What's it like for you to have this process of moving from one project to the other? Do you sort of get used to, I won't say cutting relationships off, but sort of understanding this finite quality that they have?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be in this business, you have to be really adaptable, because even though you may have a film that's similar content, it's like there's always circumstances and scenarios and components that are vastly different. So everything is uniquely its own. And so I think, what's really important is that, and perhaps, why I have managed to continue to, develop as a head of department is that it's really important for me to stay very organized from an administrative point of view, and make sure that is, that the creative is balanced out with just administrative organization. Because without that, then you're not going to be poised and ready to roll into the next thing. So you've got to know like the upcoming project inside and out. And so I'm not sure if that's totally answering your question, but I feel like, you also have to it's interesting because in New Zealand, you have, your crew here and the sound guys and the grips. And then you'll work in like Europe and you'll have the sound guys and the grips, and you'll work in the States or Canada, sound guys, the grips, and they're all similar creatures. So, we're all like, we tend to be very similar, and everyone's of course unique, but there's a familiarity anyway. Because everybody is doing the same type of job, and it comes with the same kind of way you dress and the equipment you have and like the flair that you wear, and so there is a familiarity. And even though you're often experiencing the first day at school over and over again, there's still just an overall sense of familiarity. Does that make sense? And did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like the analogy of it always, starting your first day of school over again.
Yeah.
It's such a great way to look at it. You worked on District 9 with Neill Blomkamp, and you worked on X with Ty West. I mean, both of these movies were also in a sense the movies that put both of these guys, these amazing directors, on the map. And you were involved. You had such a big role in both of those movies. I don't want to actually say what is the difference between the two directors, but for you as a professional and a makeup designer, what is that experience working with someone like Neill Blomkamp, who's like you mentioned earlier, a genius in his own way, and then you also have Ty West, who's definitely a genius in his own way, vastly different directors, but both with such strong visual styles. What's it like working with these two directors while they develop their stories?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I feel privileged to have and fortunate to have worked with both of them. And with Neill, part of like, to be there, to get in there on the ground floor with him was awesome. And now to be working with Ty as he's, continuing to expand and explode on the scene. But it's interesting because, they both have their own distinctive styles for sure, like their visual styles and their presentation. But there are a lot of similarities between the two of them. And one big thing is that they both love makeup effects. They love makeup and makeup effects. They're huge fans of makeup and makeup effects. So they lean into the process. They get excited about what we can do practically, how we can achieve this practically. They're like, you know what, we'll lean on VFX when we need to, but hopefully we won't. And how do we just make this awesome, like practically? And that's fucking cool, especially for a makeup effects lady. And so that is a huge similarity between the two of them. And so that gives me opportunity to just like be super colorful in the play box, right? But they both lean into the whole process of like developing a character. They are always, they're both involved in like 2D concept, and then into manufacture, and then into delivery, and seeing it through on set. So, I mean, there's similarity there as well. Like they're very involved and they care. And they're both passionate. They're both specific about their direction. They're very concise in how they want things done. But then they are both also very, once I got a flow with both of them and there was trust there, they're both, just super respectful, and both directors that I love to work with. So I would say, and they're both young guys, younger fellas. They're not old codgers. So, lots of similarities actually, which is probably why, I've worked with both of them multiple times because, the relationship, the process between me and them resonates and is productive.
Awesome. District 9 is obviously shot in South Africa, mainly in the Johannesburg area. And I don't know. Not a lot of people have commented on this. I personally haven't heard anyone comment on this, but I think that District 9, part of why it had such a distinctive look, at least to some degree, was because of its setting, because it was shot in Johannesburg, which is this unique place. What was it like? What was it like for you shooting in Johannesburg? And did the settings around you? You talked about working in the townships, which also has a very distinctive kind of look. Did it influence your work and what you did with Sholto and on District 9 in general?
Yeah, I think, well, District 9 was, it was a magical project for both myself and my husband, Joe Dunkley, who we were a team on that. We Weta Workshop sent us out as a team. I was handling the makeup effects aspect, and he was also handling makeup effects, but also, specialty props and specialty weapons and various things, alien eggs, etc. So we went out as a team, and we were brought in the 11th hour, which was pretty scary. And we basically received kit over in Johannesburg that we had never laid eyes on. And so it was all exciting and scary. And though it was just magical, because it felt like everybody that was there, was super up for the challenge and super excited to be there. It was our first time working in South Africa, and we just absolutely loved working with the South African crew, because they were very, they cared a lot, and they were very present. They were very passionate. My crew was very supportive. And certainly, being in those settings influenced like the overall feel, and it was just an unfolding of magic every day. Charlotte, working with him day in, day out, he was so invested. He was so, respectful of our process, and we had fun doing it. It was just one of those magical projects where you just come out of it and you're like, I would say it was one of the top movie making experiences of my life, and it will probably remain that to the end of my career, just because it was just something you couldn't plan for, but there was a lot of, there was just a lot of special within it. And then, as we were shooting it, we were like, what are we shooting? It was hard to really understand, even though we had read the script, it was hard to understand where it was going to go, because like I said earlier, there was a lot of improv that was mingled like within, our shooting days. And so, yeah, but in the end, when we watched it, we were like, holy cow, that's amazing film. Like, we did that. How did we do that?
Yeah, all of that certainly comes through in the movie, and it was an amazing movie. And you've spoken so fondly of your experiences on X and The Way of Water, and also now on District 9. Movie sets can be such exciting places to be and to work in. How do you deal with all the different stresses that one gets in the movie world?
Well, I think going back to what I said earlier, I think just being as organized as you can be, because the more organized you are, the more prepared you are, the better you're going to be able to deal with all of that. And so I think that's first and foremost. And then a dear friend of mine and mentor, Howard Berger, many years ago, I've worked with him many times. And I just watched him as he led the team and as he operated and as he dealt with the heavy stresses and, the requirements that were laid upon him on films like, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and all of that. But he comes to everything with humor. He's such a funny guy. And so in those crazy moments, of course, he dealt with the matter and dealt with it seriously, ultimately. But coming to trying to incorporate as much laughter as you can and lightness into these potentially very stressful moments, And I just remember watching him operate that way and seeing that that was how he diffused some of his stresses. And it was a real example to me. I mean, geez, we're making a movie, we're telling a story. It should be fun. It should be fun. It should be exciting. We're not, performing open heart surgery on a dying man or woman. We are making a film or making a TV show. It should be a fun experience.
I need to remind myself of that sometimes. Thank you
we
so
all
much.
do.
Thank you so much for sharing. Definitely. Are there any other people, other personalities that really made an impression on you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, all the directors that I've worked with that have done projects that were inspiring as I grew up, like Jim Cameron, like those are, in our first meeting, that's quite a occasion to come face to face with somebody who, has creatively inspired you, and super exciting. And then of course, like the first meeting with any A-list actor is always like, it just takes you a minute to settle into the conversation. But I think, for me, I've never been like starstruck. The description of that word for me means you're kind of like deer caught in the headlights. So I've never had that experience where I'm like, oh shit, what am I doing? What do I say? Why am I here? But sometimes it just takes a minute to get into a comfortable conversation because you're looking at someone you've been looking at, like with Matt Damon or Jodie Foster, people that you've grown up watching all their movies. And then there you are talking to them about, having a creative discussion with them. So sometimes it takes a minute, but you just really lean into the job at hand. And then you get past, any kind of uncomfortable or overwhelming feeling.
Right. So it's sort of the reliance on the work that gets you through everything.
Yeah, totally.
This is going to be a difficult question, so be prepared, Sarah.
Uh-oh.
Is there a movie? Is there a movie that you are particularly proud of? Whether it be from a makeup perspective or just being involved. Is there a movie that Sarah is really proud of?
I'm proud of all of them, not to be a Pollyanna, but I am proud of all of them to some degree, because there were aspects of all of them that were uniquely challenging. But I think the ones that I'm most proud of with like my family would be, the likes of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and having done that with Howard Berger and Tammy Lane, and then District 9 and having done that with, Neill Blomkamp and with Charlton and with my husband, Joe. Like that was a really cool experience. And then, definitely Avatar, The Way of the Water, because it's such a huge presentation. And then I love X because it's just a quirky film that has also reached a lot of people. I've never in my life gotten so many emails from admirers of like the makeup, the straight makeup, the blue eyeshadow on Maxine. Like, what did you use? Like I've told probably 100+ people what I used on her for that. And, but then wanting to know how we went between Maxine and Pearl. And, so there's been so much interest, so much excitement. So I'm proud of that, and then I'm proud of everything because you put everything that you have into each film, into each project. You throw every part of yourself at it. So proud of it all, but those would be the top ones. And then also, I've worked a couple times with actor Dane DeHaan, and he was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I did his transformation, Harry turning into the Green Goblin. And that was awesome, and proud of that work because we were just such a little collaboration, and he's a joy to work with and a dear friend of mine now. And so proud of our challenges on that and how we overcame and just the end result of that.
Do you get a sense when you work on a movie like X, I mean, surely with the bigger movies, certainly, but with a movie like X, for example, do you get a sense that you're working on something particularly special, something that's going to resonate?
That's a good question, because often you're working on something and you're like, oh my God, this is going to be a hit. Like, whoa, watch out, world, like, watch out. And then the movie comes out and you're like, it didn't, editing is such a big part of it all, and music and all of that. And so sometimes you're like, oh, it just didn't quite get there. And so you can think while you're shooting it, it's going to be the cat's pajamas, and then it's not necessarily. And it doesn't do well at the box office and stuff. But then sometimes you'll be working on something and you're like District 9, like, holy shit, I hope they can pull something together with all this. And then you see it and you're like, oh my God, what? And so it's really hard to know, it really is hard to know, because, you've got pre-production, you've got production, and then you got post-production. And a lot happens in post-production. And so if that doesn't all go as per, then sometimes it just doesn't come together. So I'm a big believer in, like, the post-production portion of all of it needs to be. And so I think for, especially for Ty West, he's editing, he's, figuring out the music. He is heavily involved in the post-production aspect, which is why I think his films do so well. And he has such a profound and in-depth understanding of movie making and what he wants. So he's got his head wrapped around every stage of the way, the pre-production, the production, the post. And so I think that shows in the end, for sure.
Great answer. You have, like, friends and family come over to you and say, hey, Sarah, could you quickly do my makeup for me?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, my family, they're like, can we just come to set and, meet this person, or what's it like? And yeah, it's exciting. I mean, it's exciting for my family who don't work in the film industry. I remember on Elysium, my brother, Chris, he's a doctor. He's a surgeon, my little snotty brother. And I invited him up for a day, and he came to visit. It was quite a big base camp, and we were doing a factory scene, and he was like, he's like, what is this? He's like, this is massive. And he couldn't believe it. He had never been on a movie set. He'd never seen, base camp and all of that. And he was just blown away. And then I said, come on in the trailer. And then Matt Damon walks in, and I start doing all this, like, crazy, the prosthetics on the back of his head, the tattoos. And so they're talking about poker and all this fun stuff. And Chris is just like, this is crazy. And then, I'm going to take, Chris on a tour of, the factory and the set. And all of a sudden I turn around and Matt's taking him off. He's taking him for a personal tour. And so, so that was really exciting for my brother. It's fun to have, like, those little moments with family and friends as they integrate into, like, our very surreal, world of filmmaking.
Your last official question, Sarah, then I promise you I'm going to let you go.
That's all right. All good. Great.
What advice would you give someone who wants to sort of take the path that you have taken? What advice would you give an upcoming makeup artist?
Yeah, well, I'm currently doing a mentorship program with the Last Looks podcast, and that's Jamie Lee McIntosh. That's her program. So I'm mentoring 2 young ladies right now, currently, and so it's been awesome. I've just thoroughly enjoyed it. We have a couple sessions left, but what I say to them is work hard, show up, don't be late. Look for stuff to do, take initiative, be positive, be a positive part of the team, be resilient, and be the easy one. As far as just being, don't be a complicated entity on the team. And if you do that, if you work hard at your craft, if you're constantly growing and investing time of your own into your creative growth, and then you have that other area sorted, you're going to do well. So that's my advice.
Okay. Basically, be professional and be the easy one to work with.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Great. Okay. I'd like to ask you some quick fire questions. So your first question is, who wins in a fight? Major from Ghost in the Shell or Maxine from X?
Oh, Maxine from Max. Heck yeah. Hell yeah.
Awesome. Name 3 movies you didn't work on that you would have loved to work on.
Young Frankenstein. I would have loved to do I, Tanya. I almost got that job and I was gutted not to do it. Tropic Thunder.
CGI or practical effects?
Oh, practical effects. Hell yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. All the way, man. Practical. Hell yeah.
Love to hear it. Favorite snack to watch movies to?
Thin sliced pizza.
Hot or cold?
Melty cheese, so hot. Yeah.
Okay, movie that you've seen more than any other?
I think Tropic Thunder.
Sarah Rubano's favorite horror movie?
Now that X has come out, I would say X. Prior to X, I like the original Freddy Krueger film, so Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, that scared me when I was a kid, but I still think of it in a very nostalgic way. So
Sarah Rubano's favorite music?
Oh shit, there's so much. The Footloose soundtrack. Hey, I'm in full 80s method mode, so yeah, Footloose.
If you could go back to the golden age of horror and work on one of these 3 films, which one would it be? The Wolfman, Frankenstein, or Dracula?
The Wolfman. And I think because there is a lot of fabrication and makeup aspect to that. So yeah, I mean, I just love the dance between makeup and fabrication. Yeah.
You don't know how happy that makes me, because The Wolfman is the whole reason why I love horror movies. Favorite slasher movie from the 80s? You said A Nightmare on Elm Street. Would you have liked to have worked on that movie?
Oh yeah, hell yeah. I mean, that was so cool. Like Robert Englund and all that, for sure. That would have been super cool. One
true life character, dead or alive, you would like to bring to the screen from a makeup perspective?
Iggy Pop would be a great one, because he was quite distressed and moody in his appearance, and that's kind of my jam. So let's say Iggy Pop.
I could put my 10 cents in. I would love to see Sarah Rubano recreate Kurt Cobain.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, let's try to manifest that. Dan, you can help me.
Sarah, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this interview with me and chatting with me. It was wonderful to chat with you and get your insights on the world of movies and the world of makeup. Is there anything for the viewers out there that you would like to speak about? You spoke a little bit about your mentoring program. Is there a website that you would like us to check out? Anything like that?
Keep going to the movies, keep going to the theater, keep being supporters of practical makeup effects, keep that world alive. It'd be a very sad thing to see everything go VFX. So keep the love for practical makeup effects, and keep going to the movies. So yeah, those are my parting words. Yeah, it's been a pleasure seeing you again, Den, and thank you so much for having me on your show. You're fabulous. So it's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
No, it's absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Gaze into the abyss.